Well, welcome everybody. My name is Sudhir, and I head the AI platform business for Infosys. And I'm mostly going to be asking questions. So, Mark, you're in the hot seat.
Okay, good.
So let me get started with my first question. So you have been at AT&T almost quarter century now. Maybe you can talk about your journey at AT&T and how you got into the AI and
Yeah. So I started, believe it or not, it makes me feel old, when 1G was going to 2G. We're talking about 5G right now, right? So I started off like designing the standards. How are we actually going to do 2G? And very technical, kind of working around the country and on the standards committee. And then started actually saying, well, how do you optimize these networks? How do you optimize a wireless network? So we started figuring out what makes customers happy. How do we improve the net promoter score of the customers? How do we figure out when they're so unhappy that they might actually churn due to network? So then we started prioritizing investment. The iPhone came out 2007. Data went through the roof, as you all know. And it was a big challenge optimizing the networks. And we started, if you had a good engineer at those days, they could maybe make 10 changes per day in optimizing the parameters of the network. And we said, sometimes this traffic is so dynamic, it's moving around. Couldn't we do better? Couldn't we predict where the traffic is going between the cell sites? Couldn't we do that in a self-optimized way? So you may have heard about the term self-optimized network. So we were actually doing that way back when, and we launched the first self-optimizing network, and we got it up to 1 million changes per day in optimizing the network and kind of tuning it, and took a ton of the challenges that the customers experience out of the network, right? Drop calls, block calls, those type of things. So it all started kind of back with that. Mm-hmm. And then we started, down the road saying, well, it's a lot bigger. This machine learning and prediction and self-optimizing networks, a lot bigger than just that. Mm-hmm. AT&T is big, right? So we got a lot of opportunities in AI, and we want to kind of expand that. So that's when we started saying, well, let's kind of pull a group of those folks together, I happen to be one of them, and start applying it across AT&T in a broader scale.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. So I think most companies have dabbled with AI a little bit here and there in the last few years, and many of them, when we meet them, they talk about they want to accelerate the journey. They want to sort of scale it from there. And typically, there are sort of a few ways to do that. And one of the ways that companies are doing that is creating these consolidated organization around mm-hmm. AI automation, which is somewhat similar to what you guys have done. So maybe if you can talk about your vision behind this CDO office and yeah. how you have consolidated that.
Yeah, so of course it all starts with the fuel. That's the data, right? So when we first started, we called it big data at the time. So we said, well, let's get some of this data together, get these data lakes. And AT&T was built from many different companies, right? And each one of those had their own siloed data, right? It's kind of all over the place. And the first thing we said, well, we need to get something because the power is joining the data, right? If you can understand the full 360 experience of the customer, the full 360 experience of the network, you could do a lot of things there. So we started with that, mm-hmm. Putting that together. That was like 5 years ago where we did that. In the last year, we put together the Chief Data Office because we said there's something that when we first started, it was kind of getting some data scientists together, some AI software engineers, but then we said we really need to make sure this data supply chain is robust. And we pulled that function together. We said we need data supply chain, we need the delivery team, and we need automation as well. So think RPAs, chatbots, digital assistants. We put all those together, and we said that's a Chief Data Office. Okay? So that's how we kind of started there. Now, you can almost think of our group as we were somewhat internal consultants across AT&T. So trying to understand all the challenges of the business and working together there and engaging them in that fashion.
And how has been the collaboration between the business units and across other sort of functions?
Yeah, so it's been tremendous. I think the first thing we see, and you probably see in your companies too, there's more AI opportunities than you can actually do.
Sure.
Right? So that's we started saying, well, we have to unlock self-service. because we can't do it all as a somewhat small group, although we're several hundred software engineers and data scientists, right? So we said, well, it's not just we need to expose the data, right? Democratize the data, that's where it starts. And then, you have to, what are the three things you have to do? Well, you have to be able to find the data. What are you looking for? You have to be able to assess it so you can try to understand it, and a bit of exploring it, right? So we somewhat democratize that for the business units in general so they can kind of see what's out there and try to do some of that stuff themselves. And then the more machine learning, data science stuff, we try to help with as well, and I'll explain a little bit more of that.
Yeah, sure. No, so actually, let's get to that. I mean, that's kind of what the topic of this thing is. So, I mean, we have heard about democratization of AI, and many people sort of talk about doing that. I think AT&T is in a unique sort of situation where you guys actually have taken the first few steps on that. What has been sort of your so far benefits from doing that, and sort of what are the accomplishments that you have achieved so far?
Yeah. So I think when we started democratizing the data first, right? So people started exploring it, they started assessing it, started finding it. The next step is there was some low-hanging fruit, so they had some of the RPA and automation and chatbot stuff. But then there was too many AI opportunities in the machine learning piece. And there's a limited amount of us. So how do you democratize that part? That's the data science part. That's where we're limited in the talent, right? So we said, well, we want to help them, and we came up with a platform we call Pinnacle. And Pinnacle is a bit of a crowdsourced AI collaboration and challenge platform. And here's the concept. So a business unit will have a problem, okay? I want to forecast something. I want to forecast sales. I want to predict churn. I want to predict something, right? I want to classify something. They kind of have the data set. They've explored it. They found it, stuff. So they know what they're trying to solve, but maybe they don't have the full expertise there. They can pose that problem to Pinnacle. It goes in there, and it's exposed to all the data scientists, AI software engineers, and we have some AI robots as well. Okay, now these robots are not kind of what our Google colleague was talking about, that thing, but if these robots will actually do some of the machine learning. So some of you people have heard about companies like H2O. You may have heard about AutoML. Infosys, my colleague here, has something called NIA, which is quite good as well, and data robot. So it's those type of things. We have 4 robots that show up, okay? So you pose a problem to Pinnacle, and the AI robots start trying to solve it right away, okay? It's also exposed, assuming that they've opened it up and we've passed compliance and privacy and everything first, it's exposed to the data scientists, so then they can see it as well. And the robots will start solving that problem, and it goes on to a leaderboard, okay? So the leaderboard, think of it as a stack rank in terms of you're trying to solve prediction, you're trying to minimize this mean square error, whatever it is, starts showing up on the leaderboard in a stacked rank form, okay? And you'll see the robots somewhat right away. We let it run about a day typically. And then the data scientists can start looking at it as well, and they start contributing it there. Okay, so it's kind of a crowdsourced thing that starts it, because sometimes you'll actually see if the problem is simple enough, the robots do a fairly good job, okay?
Wonderful. So I think that this is, again, with so many different clients that we work with, I think AT&T is definitely one of the pioneer in sort of actually implementing something like a Pinnacle, where they're actually seeing these sort of multiple different implementations side by side. Can you share some early results, some concrete thing that you might have?
Yeah, I think, did we try to get a slide?
I think so. There is some. Are you able to show this one slide?
Okay.
Let's see.
So we have many of these challenges going. These challenges that we have, is it on the screen? Okay. These challenges that we have, we typically run them for maybe a month, maybe 2 months, depending on the problem. Before I kind of explain this slide here, this one's in the midst. Okay, so this one is current challenge, competition, crowdsourced thing that's undergoing. We have 11 of these challenges going at the moment. The one that just finished before this, we had 66 submissions, okay, from the robots. The robots always show up. There are 4 of the 66. And then we have data scientists as well. And 66 submissions in, and you always kind of put in a baseline model. If there is no baseline model, the robot is the default baseline model, okay? But what's very interesting is the one that just finished, and I'll talk about this in a minute, is the 66 submissions. The person that was working it beforehand was working on it for a couple months, okay? We put it into Pinnacle, and within 2 weeks, the 66 submissions, we improved the baseline by 36%, okay? So huge improvement in the accuracy, and what we've always seen is people think about problems differently, or the AI opportunities, and they solve them slightly different, right? So think about a data science problem. You put something in, you're trying to predict something. You're going to you'll see the data that's submitted, and different people will create different derived data from that data, features, right? And they do it a little bit different. That's one thing that's different. The other thing that we notice they do is they have different expertise in the algorithms too, right? So they do that as well. And that's what we see this stack rank in the 66 submissions and the 36% is that we got the improvement. Now, the final thing is the final 10 on the leaderboard were all ensembles. There was no single submission in the final 10, right? Because people have the algorithms or the data, the drive data, it predicts different attributes better, right? So let's say it was a forecast. One may predict weekdays better. The other algorithm may predict weekends better, or this product better, right? So you put the combination of them, the ensemble, it always tends, we always see that tends to win. Okay, so the final 10 were the ensembles. So this is the one that you see here. This is 11 challenges that are currently underway. They're all forecasting flavors in this regard, and I'll just, some of the things you can think about. This is like looking at forecasting national sales, market level sales, store sales, and then when you sell something, many times we install, what do we install? We install DirecTV or Uverse or something. We have to go out to the house and install it, or broadband. So there's workforce. You have to forecast the workforce to install the things, and then you have to have a forecast for how much product do you need. So those are all the flavors there, and we have all certain twists to those we're putting in there. That's kind of the background of what these things are. So this one has been underway about 2 weeks. Some of these things were worked on, individually a month or two before that. But you could see the improvement there. So those bars are the percent improvement from the baseline, and it's about 4 to 18%, and 295 submissions as of yesterday, okay, or 12/5, right? And 4 to 18% improvement, and it's working well. Now, one other thing is, I always ask, how do you improve the accuracy? What's the other benefit of doing something like this in an open AI format? The benefit is you put it up there. Anybody can do a model, right? But how good is it? That's the benefit of the leaderboard. But the other thing is you put it up there in an open way, you can see the data that somebody's using for the model. And the other benefit that we see is people start saying, I have data that can help that, right? I have data that you're not using that would be additional predictive variables that you could add to that. Think about sales for a second, right? So if you have market sales and you get down to store level sales, that's kind of a local thing, right? And the first thing, we threw this one up here and we said, oh, okay, we have this thing, but somebody noticed, well, you don't have the population of that zip code in there. You don't have the market penetration in there, which might be related, right? You don't have some demographic things that could be useful too. So all of a sudden people start joining data sets in there, right? So it's not just data scientists that we see contributing here. It's the people that are the data software engineers, the AI software engineers, that all of a sudden they contribute as well, right? And the interesting thing is I don't know if you're like me, let's take basketball for a minute, right? So if I just go play basketball, so let's just go shoot something, we'll start shooting around, and it's okay. But then you say, let's start keeping score. It becomes a whole different ballgame. The interesting thing of this is it turns it into keeping score, and you start seeing people actually taking it very seriously, right? There's it's a bit of reputation that they start seeing. They start getting them on the leaderboard, and they're kind of talking. You see them collaborating. Hey, how are you doing in that challenge? And remember, it turns out as an ensemble, hey, let's partner. How is yours doing on weekends? How is yours doing for this product? And you start seeing them join forces there. By the way, the robots are in here too. Would you like to know how many of these are yours?
I didn't want to put you on a spot, but yes.
Okay, so 3 of these, the Infosys NIA AI robot is actually in the lead, okay? But I don't want to get your hopes up because you know the robots never actually win, right?
That's okay, as long as our robots plus your data scientists do the best
No,
job.
but I say the robots, why do the robots never actually win? Because you see what the robots do, and it turns out to be an ensemble, right? At least that's our experience. You pick the best robot or the features they have, you combine it with somebody else, and it's the combination.
Exactly.
So as long as you're kind of in the ensemble, that's probably still winning.
Exactly. And the thing is that the idea, of course, as we had also talked earlier, is that you get the robots to do some of the basic thing up front, and the data scientists can then sort of do the fine-tuning on top of that, and that actually kind of also benefit.
I love the jump start of the robots that they give you, right? A lot of this is not just, you know, the hyperparameter optimization of a particular algorithm, is that they actually start creating features. You start thinking forecast. Forecast is a time series thing, right? So how do you create all those time series variables, right? And they have some of that built in, right? So they'll pick all sorts of averages. Let's do the quarter, let's do the half, let's do weekends, let's do weekdays. And they put all those in there kind of as automatic features that you get, right? But it's not just regression type stuff. We have this for classification and, you know, those type of things as well.
Pretty nice. And the interesting thing is that you talked about democratization of data and also of the modeling. But also what is happening really is democratization of the problem, because anybody can bring a problem to this challenge, right?
Yeah.
Which sort of really making it open to everybody in your company.
I mean, I love it. And the more it gets exposed, we're starting to see in the business, I want to put mine in there, right? And you know, we use this for all sorts of, it's other interesting thing. It somewhat ups the game of the expertise of the people doing it as well. And what do I mean by that? Well, somebody's going to put something in, and all of a sudden they see somebody jump 5 positions on the leaderboard, right? Now, if it's a competition, because some of these things we have rewards. Like on this one, we have, I think it's $1,000 for who scores the most overall in these 11 challenges for first place, 500 second place, 250. It's not a lot, but it kind of gets something going. But at the end, everything becomes open. And whenever I submit myself, I always put it up. I open it up because I'm trying to get others to kind of, you know, do better as well. But you see people start learning. They start saying, oh, I didn't know about that algorithm. I didn't know about that way to create features, right? I didn't know about that package or that library that you used, right? And you see it as a training exercise too. So I like it that it somewhat ups the game. I'm really into this open AI to kind of improve it too. The other thing we've noticed is sometimes it's not the people you expect that are doing well. A lot of the folks are doing skills pivots, right? So they're engineers, they've been technically trained, but they start picking up. There's so much information out there on the web that you can get a lot of training. You know, and we'll get into that in a minute, that we train as well. But we see developers pretty traditionally winding up in the top 5 that I would have no idea, right? And they've been picking it up themselves, and all of a sudden, you start giving them harder and harder problems, which is great.
Very good. So yeah, I mean, let's jump into the organizational impact. But that's actually always the big question almost every executive asks me is what's going to happen to my organization? Do I have to fire everybody that is there right now and hire some new people? What has been the impact in your organization, and have you reskilled people, or what has?
So we're about 250,000 folks. So we have a lot going on in encouraging skills pivot. Skills pivot means you need to train up on the new technology, some of the the data analytics stuff. In fact, one of our kind of top 10 priorities is to be data powered. Using data for your decisions and analytics, right? So there's that natural culture that we have going there. And I think we spend $200 million just on training per year. And we have $24 million in tuition assistance. encouraging people to do those things. And some groups take it super serious. There's this one group, so we do a lot, not on the problems you see here, but we did a lot on kind of optimizing the dispatch. We have tens of thousands of technicians every day that are going out and installing things or repairing things. That particular group, what really took it serious, 40% of the managers in that group have a nano degree now, right? Which is pretty amazing. So, but the whole training thing, it's people take it serious. This is one way that we're going to encourage them, come in and participate in some of these things too.
Yeah. And the thing is that for most of these challenges, you didn't have to hire new talent. It was mostly people who are already in the company that are doing this, right? So
that's right.
It didn't have the whole concern about I have to find new talent actually is kind of there.
Some of our vendor partners like yourself that already have an AT&T UID and we're all in there, so you guys are participating as well, not just the robots.
Sure,
yeah.
Sure. So final question. So fantastic. This is, the reason I'm actually excited about this is because this is what we preach when I go to clients. I talk about this, and we say our platform democratizes AI and all that stuff. So this is a very good proof point that you're talking about. And it is doing really well. Are there things that you thought maybe now that you have sort of advantage of looking back, like you could have done differently? What would be the suggestion that you would have for audience to do it in a different way?
Yeah, so if I kind of rewind the clock, and you may have some of the experience too, is if you're a company like us, which was many different companies put together, the data is kind of all over the place, right? The whole thing about, remember we said democratize the data first, that is something that you always got to start there, right? And the one thing that I think we may have done faster is sometimes the systems are, somebody else owns it, it's production, and you want to kind of grab data from it. You got to get something work out some agreement of how you get the data and kind of use it there. So that whole thing of a solution to get the data easily and start using it is useful. So that whole democratizing the data is something I would say is useful. If you're just starting out, it always starts with a project, right? You start with saying, I'm going to try to optimize something, I'm trying to predict something, I'm trying to improve something there. So you start with those. And don't be afraid that some of them don't pan out. I would, when we first started, I think we had, third or more of them not work. But you get a lot of them. You just try to do the quick things, fail fast type stuff. But you're going to start building it up, and you're going to start getting more of these projects that come through, and you're going to start finding that many of the new challenges or AI opportunities are similar to the other ones you've done. And then you start thinking of reusable components, right? So you want to start, you're going to move from projects to platforms, and you want to start thinking of those things and building them in a modular microservice type way so you can reuse them. So a lot of our stuff right now, we call it AI solutions, right? So we're actually putting things into bucket. Is this a forecasting problem? Is this an optimization problem? Is this a digital assistance problem? Is this a customer insight type thing? And we try to figure out, okay, all the new things that are on the docket, what are the things that I could reuse from the other ones? How do I do incremental investment there to make it reusable and modular so you can go faster? So the faster you can start thinking about that, you always have to start with projects to start with, but start thinking of making them reusable and so you can build upon them too.
Perfect.
And then to the extent that you can, this collaboration thing has been really good for us so far. But that's useful too if you can move to something like that. It seems to do quite well.
Perfect. Thank you. So really, it's a very enlightening, and as I said, you guys have taken the steps toward democratizing AI that everybody sort of is thinking about it, and I'm hoping that audience actually was able to get something that they can act on as well. So thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for your partnership.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.